We welcome you in the Sam and Cole podcast following the Jaguars' 51-17 loss to the New England Patriots. We're brought to you, as always, by Champion Cycling, locations Mandarin, the Beach, and Orange Park. And let's start with this, Sam. If I'm going to play the Jaguars optimist, what I would say would be, listen, the Jaguars are not at a point in their progress under Gus Bradley that they're supposed to beat arguably the best team in the league on the road. It's, so you can look
I would agree with that.
You can look at how they lost, or you can look at that they lost and put it in the bigger picture and say, listen, all right, it's next week is a much bigger defining game than this week is. Because next week, because the Colts appear to be down, because everybody in the division is now 1-2. Next week's something that actually could impact, the storyline of the season here. This week it was just, whether it was a loss or a blowout loss, I think people generally, there were some optimistic Jaguars fans who thought coming off last week that it would be different. But now, I don't know if you can totally embrace and release the thought about how they lost in this thing, but if you can, you probably sleep a lot better at night as a Jaguars fan.
Yeah, but I don't think you can because now maybe Miami is terrible, and they certainly showed that today at home against Buffalo. But, seeing this team in the preseason, seeing them, how they produced, seeing how they played, today it just looked like week one and all of last year and the year before and the year before. So we have this expectation that they're this football team that can play like they did against Miami in the fourth quarter last week, can play like they did against Detroit in the preseason. And they literally just looked like they were outclassed at every position across the field. Gus Bradley is big on talking about the precision of the National Football League. And the Patriots show that, as you mentioned, they're arguably the best team in the league. And it really shows the glaring difference between a team that, A, has their act together and has a 16-year veteran quarterback who's 38 years old, who understands the offense and makes things happen. At the same time, and Gus Bradley admitted this after the game, Brady also has players that make plays around him. The Jaguars have still an inordinate number of drops for a professional football team. And I just think that's inexcusable. You're paid to catch the ball. That's what they pay you to do. So catch the damn ball.
Now, I agree with you. And I'll just say up front, I'm not one who thinks you can dismiss how they played. But here's the reality. This team this year is where I think people expected the team to be last year. That they would be inconsistent. They'd have some highs, have some lows, be competitive most games. If you're going to get blown out, do it on the road at a great team, the defending Super Bowl champions, if that's going to happen. This is what people expected last year. And you can say, well, Sunday looked like last year's team, and you'd be right. But if you take the first 3 games of the season as a sample size, I think you can say that if we had gotten this for an entire season last year, up, down, competitive most of the time, not competitive against a great team, you'd go, okay, well, this is a team that's taking steps forward. And I wonder in some regard, and I'm not trying to make excuses built in for Dave Caldwell and Gus Bradley, but I wonder if in some regard their self-professed 3-year plan shouldn't have been a 3-year plan. But you can't say 4-year plan in the NFL. Nobody's going to have that kind of patience. But,
right. Well, I'll buy that. You're right. Because it's a 4-year plan.
Yeah.
And particularly, every team has injuries. The Jaguars have had injuries at some key situations. You do think about what this roster will look like if Cyprian plays, if Julius Thomas plays, if Dwayne Gratz plays, if they have all their running backs. Derek Marks plays. There's just a lot of players that you'd like to see in the game just to see what it did and if it would make a difference. it may make a difference over 60 minutes. It's not going to make a difference in one play or another. But Gus Bradley, you can read what Gus Bradley said after the game, and it sounds a lot like what he has said after every loss like this in the past. If you see what he says after the game, he has a very different look on his face.
He had higher expectations, don't you think?
Right. He absolutely.
Even if they're going to lose, he didn't want this.
Yeah, he is A, discouraged a little bit.
Yeah.
And B, he's mad. And you very rarely see him mad. And you could tell in his post-game press conference just by not how he answered the questions. Well, maybe it is how he answered the questions, because the words coming out said one thing, but what he was saying was something very different. And I think that's good, because you can't constantly say, it's a process, it's a journey. We won't be defined by this. We'll be defined by how we come out of this. And, all of those things that they have said that, you buy into when guys are rebuilding a team. But by no means do I think this represents who they are. Having said that, by no means did I ever think that this was possible again for this football team.
Well, let me say a couple of things. Number one, it was you're right, it was lopsided. They were outclassed. When a team doesn't punt,
the Patriots scored on all 9 possessions.
On all 9 real possessions, right?
Yeah.
That's a blowout, and it's as lopsided as it's going to get in the NFL. The Jaguars did have some chances, but they don't have, again, they're not a margin for error team against top teams. They can't have drops. They can't have, bad reads by the quarterback, whatever. They can't do that. And I think it's probable that Gus Bradley is more frustrated by the way the defense played than by the offense.
Absolutely. And because he's a defensive coach, and the fact that they didn't force one punt is just an unfathomable kind of statistic when you think about it, but they didn't. And, they talked about how they bounced back from adversity. The throw that Blake Bortles made that was intercepted by McCourty was a physically bad throw. If he had thrown the ball where it's supposed to be, it's not a bad read. Mercedes has a chance to catch the ball, but it's just a bad throw. And you don't expect a guy who has that kind of physical talent to make a physically terrible throw like that. And Bradley mentioned a couple of times, we figured we'd be going into halftime down at worst 13-6. We're going to kick a field goal. If we miss it, it's 13-3. And it's possible that it's 13-10. But instead, not only do they throw the interception there, which is a physical mistake, then they give up 7 points on the other end. I mean, that, if you're defined by how you're supposed to bounce back, then they're jello.
Here's the thing, though, Sam, I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit. I don't think this game is going to have anything to do with the definition of this season.
I agree with that, Cole. I'm just saying that the talk that they have talked about who they are and what that locker room's like, how they bounce back, how they react to adversity. I think all that talk in this game was just talk. They bounced back after the loss to Carolina by regrouping during the week and beating Miami, and kind of held it together against a Miami team that seemed determined not to lose that game, but the Jaguars imposed their will on them. Today, when things went wrong, they just continued to go wrong. There was no bounce back. There was no spark. There was nobody, making a difference. This was a team that didn't react the way that you think when you get to know these guys that their personalities would allow.
2 guys who I thought did play well. Number one, I thought Puslesny was just. I mean, if you want a textbook understanding of Paul Puslesny's game, watch this one. I think he had 18 tackles, something like that.
Yeah, just officially. Yeah.
Again, tackle numbers aren't always indicative, but he's in there making plays. He did get singled out on the first touchdown by Deion Lewis, which I think was an unfair. Gronkowski had a block on him. That was Deion
Gronkowski
Lewis
blocked
making
him
a play.
and Telvin Smith at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
And Lewis went the other way. And by the way, I mean, I rarely get a chance to watch the games, but I did watch the game today on CBS. And does Rich Gannon ever say anything we don't already know?
No.
Okay.
I
I mean, because I've never heard such pablum in my life. It was like, really? You're an analyst? Well, the Jaguars are from Jacksonville. Yeah, no kidding.
The other thing that struck out to me, Allen Robinson had at least 2, maybe 3 balls that with the old rule would have been catches for long gains, but he up in the air pushed out of bounds.
Right.
And I'm not saying that rule should or shouldn't be what it is. They took that out so it wasn't a judgment call. But, when you're throwing that ball up in the air, that can impact that quite a bit. And I think the Patriots clearly knew that when the ball was going to be up in the air, if it was next to the sideline, just push him out of bounds. Let him catch it and push him out of bounds.
Shove him over there. Exactly.
Yeah. It's the easiest way to control it. So next week, it's the Colts.
Right.
Who are 1-2, not looking particularly good. That's the game that defines the early part of this schedule.
I agree. And, the Colts are 1-2. The Jaguars have to play them up there. They're coming off of, I think, an embarrassing loss and how they play. Now, they don't have to even win the game.
No.
They just need to go up there and play in a competitive situation and look like the team that we think that we know they can be. I mean, Bortles today was not only not precise, he was not good. I mean, he had 3 or 4 nice throws, but besides that, he just didn't play well. And I tweeted late in the game when Brady was still in the game, I hope Bortles is over there taking notes on the sidelines, because even though he's not going to have the depth of understanding that Brady does of the offense right now, there is no question when Brady drops back and he sees somebody open, he throws him the ball. And he has a good idea of who's going to be open, and maybe that's a big part of it.
Remember, they both have Tom House to go to as a common link, and
sure,
there's a lot. I don't know if you can learn anything directly from Brady, if Brady shares that sort of stuff. I don't know if he's that kind of guy, but you can learn from Tom House what Tom House has developed with Brady, and you can go to school on that guy very easily, no doubt about it.
Exactly. Just disappointing, and we'll let him regroup. I thought it was interesting that after the game, Gus said that there's a lot of lessons to be learned in this particular game. This kind of loss, I don't know what. I mean, because I wouldn't even look at the tape. I would move on. But I mean, I guess there's some very classic situations that you can look at and realize that, hey, we didn't make this play, we didn't make that play, we didn't make this play. This is all. And a lot of times, what a coach needs to say is what Hugh Freeze said to his team when they went to play Alabama. Who you are is good enough. And I think sometimes the Jaguars fail in that test, that they try to be something that they're not too often.
Well, I would say in New England against the Patriots, who the Jaguars are is not good enough.
But it doesn't get them beat 51-17 either.
No. Yeah, that's true. That is, well, it shouldn't at this point. Now, again, I think we're still in a who are these guys spot, right?
Okay.
We're still trying to figure out, because if they take that progression that we think that they showed signs of in the preseason against Miami, then you're absolutely right. It shouldn't be 51-17.
Right.
But maybe they're not that. And maybe the 4-year plan or 5-year, whatever it is going to take a lot more patience than I think a lot of Jaguars fans and maybe at least one Jaguars owner has for this thing.
Here's what my theory is, Cole, is that there's 2 or 3 good teams in the league, and you look around the league right now, and everybody else is pretty mediocre. And the Jaguars are one of those mediocre teams, and they ran up against the best team in the league. I think Indianapolis is mediocre, Tennessee's mediocre, Houston's bad, Cleveland's bad, Oakland's mediocre. I mean, you can rattle off any number of teams that you want, and you go through a long list before you get to a team. You go, yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah, Green Bay.
But New England's probably at the top of that list, like you said. Green Bay, obviously.
Yeah.
Seattle, pretty good.
Yep. Yep. And now with injuries to Roethlisberger and some of these other guys, Romo, Breeze, some of those teams we thought would be maybe better are not going to be. This may be one of those years at 8-8 is good enough. So
before I go, tell me one thing about the Armada who broke their. How many minutes was it total? It was 498 going into that.
533.
533 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And that was a good night, and they wore the T-Men uniforms.
Yes, they did, and wish you could have been there. The Ingo Craig raised the T-Men flag over the pitch. And
did you know? Did you know that Ingo once sold a prized breeding bull in order to make payroll?
I knew that he was he had dairy farms. I didn't know he had to do that to make payroll, though. That's dedication.
Absolutely. The team was Dennis Smilet was the coach, and the team was playing at Wolfson Park. Mm-hmm. And he took over the team, and he at one point sold a prize breeding bull to make payroll. That's dedication.
A great story. Eric Dade is the interim head coach. They score twice. They look very professional, mature, and together. And a good time was had by all. 2-0 victory over the Rowdies.
Very good. That's the Sam and Cole podcast here right after the Jaguar game. We'll try to update you sometime in the middle of the week as the Jaguars prepare for the Indianapolis Colts, who are also 1-2. Colts are at home this week, and the Jaguars in the middle part of this 3-game road trip where they'll go to Tampa to finish it up before they finally get a home game against Houston, another division opponent. Again, thanks to Champion Cycling. There are 3 locations, Arlington, the Beach, and Mandarin. Stop by and see Jim or Brian or Phil at any of the locations, and they'll take care of you as well. And where can they find us, Cole?
On Twitter at Sam Kavaris and on Twitter at Cold Pepper. Find this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, or just follow us on social media, and we'll get it to you. Thanks so much for watching and listening to, watching if you're in the room with me, the Sam and Cole podcast.